This is November 2021, and I want to be talking about something more personal. So if you're not interested in hearing about that, then just skip this video entirely. What I'm going to be talking about is stress. And I was talking to someone today about the stress that I've endured and that I am enduring. And for me, over the years, thinking about each and every event that has happened, it can almost seem a bit overwhelming. Now, this chapter of my life began, or I should say maybe even the previous chapter, depending on how you want to write the book. It began for me December of 2012 when a female, the very same female that was being sexually abused, sex trafficked, whatever, by influential men, had falsely accused myself and another male co-worker of some sort of sexual assault. I don't know what. And apparently she has a history of this, doing this to men. And from that time on, I remember that day, the shock and awe, and living in that wake afterwards. And over the months that I had met with her in public, recording whatever I could, the stress of that, and even when I was on my own, I was also in the back of my head, what's going on? I had no idea. And then the May 4th, 2013 event, when those two former officers now decided to do street justice on her behalf and to shut me up. The beating that I sustained while handcuffed, that shock and awe, and the trauma of that, and then the trauma of being arrested or being taken into custody and then arrested, I guess, and then charged the next day. And then following that, the female, I had met with her afterwards, and there's audio recordings of that, where she said that she would testify on my behalf. And then by June of 2013, she put a restraining order on me, which I had to deal with, and I had to deal with the shock and awe of that. And then there were some other personal things that I had to deal with, like the vehicle that I had at the time broke down a whole bunch of times, and then it got stolen. And that was that summer. And then going to court, and eventually listening to the testimony of these two now former officers, and dealing with the corruption. And looking back, I remember even talking to a good buddy of mine saying, oh, it's going to be over in a few more months. And that's how they dragged it on, trying to wear me down. And I didn't make it easy once I took over the trial for the alleged assaulting a police officer and alleged obstruction. And they just kept dragging it on. And then there came a point of no return. How much money, time I've invested. And they were probably looking at the same thing once the prosecution's office probably thought, once they realized that everything went sideways, it was too far gone for them to turn around. Or they could have if they really wanted to, but it's more important to save face, right? And then reading through 4 different disclosure packages and some of the so-called information that they had about me, to include somehow with mental gymnastics linking me to mimicking a pedophile grooming a child. And again, there was no underage people involved in this. And I had the shock and awe of that, I remember. And the shock and awe of having to go every weekend to jail, being stripped shirts. It's like being raped every weekend. And then during the weekend, different events taking place and the humiliation of that. And I remember before sentencing, it took them about 6 months to sentence me. Just dragging it on. And that judge was threatening to give me 2 years less a day. And if I didn't apologize, I'm not going to apologize, and I didn't apologize. I gave an apology of sorts, basically saying, you know, I feel bad that this happened to me, etc., and I'm sorry that it happened to me. But they wanted that apology because that would have been the final nail in the coffin for the lawsuit. So it's a constant bombardment of injustice and everything else non-stop, and I never had over those years a moment where I could just relax. There was nothing to worry about, nothing going on. And then during all that time, I had my own personal, you know, we all have personal things that we have to deal with, and having to go through all that. You know, I remember just things in my past, and the woman that I married, and last time seeing her was in 1999 in the winter before I flew back to Canada. I lived overseas for a couple of years. Beautiful country there. And another shock and awe for me was in December of 2013 when my father passed away, and I couldn't be with him because of the legal proceedings. The legal proceedings started in November of 2013, and I had to make the decision over the phone to pull the plug. And I remember I had different doctors calling me, verifying it. I had to, they sent me forms. I had to fill out the forms, sent it to them. They were, because I wasn't there in person. It was a mess, and I had to deal with that. 2013, that shock and awe. I never had an opportunity to, I guess you can say, mourn that. Just put it out, everything, all these things are on the back burner. And then it was, I think it was February of 2020, I had his remains cremated, and they were still sealed in the box. And what I wanted to do was have someone from a church release his ashes into the wilderness and do it all properly, and I ended up having to do that on my own. And that was kind of a shock and awe for me. And I never, as soon as I was done that, I was heading on the road. Shock and awe of learning in January of 2020 that I did survive abortion. I was born dead for 45 minutes. Compound that death with dying by drowning. The second time I was under the water in a river for, I don't know, like 40 minutes or something. It was a long time. And that was around, I was around 12 years old. And then the first time I drowned, I think I was around like 4 or 5 years old. But, I mean, that's not a shock and awe for me. That's just whatever it is. But learning about surviving abortion, and then also learning that I survived being deliberately poisoned which I also had in the back of my head, just didn't want me around type of thing. But learning that it was for an insurance trust fund for money, had that shock and awe simultaneously, and a few other personal shock and awes, and then just surviving, worrying about gas, food, supplies, and surviving the elements. So basically, all these years, I've been dealing nonstop, without a break, without even a moment where there was nothing that I had to worry about, even to now. And there's things in my past, like we all have stuff, maybe regrets or whatever, that, kind of lingering there and everything else. And then compound all this with all my health problems, which I've mentioned. I have a heart problem. I have a lung problem. I have this new medical condition from the fall of 2020. Apparently all life-threatening, and still here. And then whatever damage was done to my head, brain, whatever, on May 4th, 2013. Headaches are nonstop. And then the injuries to my hands and wrists, which I don't have much use with them, just basic use. And then, there's this other stuff, arthritis in the knees and, whatever. Dealing with all that. It's just been non-stop for me. And this is not a woe is me, feel sorry for me. This is not about the hardships I'm going through. I'm just simply sharing basically the gist of a conversation that I had with someone. And losing everything, that shock and awe, everything I worked hard for to build a good life, gone. Have to deal with that shock and awe. So it's not just one thing that I had to deal with since December 2012, and before that I had other little shock and awes that I never had an opportunity just to sit back, relax, and resolve those things as well. With the woman that I married, and leaving a career in law and changing careers, and the hardships that I had to endure with that. There's videos on everything that I'm telling and showing independent evidence. So it's been an onslaught of trauma without a break. And people ask, like, how do I survive? And I was thinking about this since the conversation. And I think part of it could be attributed to the fact that I haven't stopped. I just keep moving. I keep pushing forward. I don't have a chance to think. Something, an event happens or something, boom, resolve it, move on, next. It is what it is. And then I was thinking, say, right now, this moment, all my troubles, everything's solved, everything's resolved, done. Like, just surviving. There's nothing that this is, for argument's sake, say utopia. I'm now in utopia. Now I have time just to relax and reflect mentally, and the constant adrenaline in my body, the tension subsides. So now all these health issues just explode. And mentally, now everything that I put on the back burner over the years is now brought to the front. Perhaps when my life, if my life ever turns around, maybe that would be the end of me. Because now, physically and mentally, everything all at once will just be on my plate to deal with. Yes, there's ways to deal with it, cope with it, handle one thing at a time, resolve one thing at a time. Yeah, I get that, but can't imagine what that would be like to have to now deal with everything that's on the back burner, physically and mentally, emotionally. Everything just being dumped on the plate and then having to deal with that. And everything that I've been going through, and I've said this in other videos, is what other people are trying to avoid right now with current worldwide events happening to them, losing everything and dealing with all the trauma and everything else. And a lot of people, even people that I know, are, despite whatever reason, they're complying. And that hurts to know that, because they're trying to avoid it. Because, as I said, and this is no criticism towards people that I know who are now complying, but a lot of people sorry, I just lost my whole train of thought there. Anyway, I'm just thinking about my friends. Probably going to come to me when I finish recording this video, but whatever. It's going to have a final point. So, here I am, sharing some personal thoughts, my personal whatever. Take from it what you will. But despite everything, of being where I am now, I said this in a recent video, the silver lining is not being bound to the nonsense of this world. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Hello, I'm just going to throw in this little bonus part here real quick, possibly to show how strong of a will I have. I don't know. But around 2010, after being in the hospital a few times for my heart, I went for what's called a nuclear stress test. And part of the test is to run on this treadmill, and the treadmill would raise higher and higher, going from a very like kiddie walk to an athletic level. And I remember the doctor had walked out, leaving the nurse in with me. Apparently she was supposed to stop me after the first few levels, but she walked away. So I was left there alone. And by the time the doctor and nurse came back, I was almost completed the advanced athletic level. I was just like a minute or two away. And he was yelling for me to slow down, stop. And when I did stop, I collapsed. And he put me in an oxygen tank. And anyway, and he said there was no way that I should have been able to complete that with my lungs and heart as they are, but I did. And when they were testing my heart, taking images, they said my heart was bigger than normal, strong because of my athletic history. But yeah, I shouldn't have made it that far, but I just kept pushing. I just turned on and kept moving forward. And that kind of ties in with what this video is about.